My name is John Dingle, the author of Karma Never Sleeps and Wings of Madness, and welcome to One Final Twist.
Today on One Final Twist, we sit down with John Dingle, the mind behind the sharp and compelling Gus Wheeler series. These mysteries are packed with atmosphere, grit, and characters who feel like they carry their whole past in their pockets. In this conversation, we will talk about craft, inspiration, the heart behind Gus, and the twists that keep the readers flying through the pages. If you love smart crime stories, unforgettable protagonists, and an author that we adore and who pours everything into his work, you are in the right place. So I'm going to start with our first question. I did a little digging. I did a little digging in your background, which it was kind of hard to find really anything, that's okay too. That means you've done a good job hiding from the AI. And it tells me that you have come from the business world, that you've kind of taught yourself how to write books. So my question is, like, how true is that? What is your past? And have you always known that you wanted to write?
So yeah, a lot bundled in there. So yes, it's very true. So have been in business my whole life. And the only writing I ever did really was business writing, right? Proposals or memos, that sort of thing. Never wrote. Have wanted to write, toyed with it years and years ago. And then my wife and I had our third child back in 98. And so in 1999-ish, somewhere thereabouts, we went away for a long weekend, first time away. And we each put down sort of the 5 things we wanted to do. We're sort of, in our 30s, whatever, and the kids were young. We had 3 kids at the time. And it was, what do we want to do? And we put down the 5 things. And the only thing that was really the same on the list was to become an author, to write a book. And so it started then. And we started, my wife Lisa and I started writing it together. And she is a phenomenal writer, and I am not, right? So I'm like banging away on the keyboard trying to get stuff done, and it really was very different than anything I had ever done. So then kids and life get in the way, and that sort of faded. And then we're empty nesters in 2016, and so I just picked it up there and just started banging away on it. And I really I think I wrote in the end probably 4 or 5 books easily that eventually became Karma Never Sleeps. I mean, it was all over the map, and it was terrible. I mean, I just cringe at what I gave my editor the first version of. It was horrible. But that's exactly right. I'd never written anything like that before. Truly sat my butt in a chair and just figured it out, not alone. My wife helped me learn to write. She really helped me find my voice. And then an editor sort of put the guardrails up and kind of put it in place. And it was just sort of blocking and tackling from there to try to get it done. It was really grinding it out, but I had many people that helped along the way for sure.
So does your wife have a background in writing?
She yes and no. So she ran businesses for the first part of her career. Then when we had our third child, she ended up staying home. But she's just a creative person. It just comes out of her. She draws. She in the past has painted. She has a blog. She writes now. She does photography, amazing photography. She designed all the gardens around our house and has done the gardening. I mean, it's just a classic case of somebody who's so artistic, it just comes out of them. And so when I first started writing this by myself, she decided she's more of her blog is more like a Nora Ephron type, kind of a different, interesting look to the world. And I was definitely into the thriller, And she's like, that you could have take that. But when I started writing it, the first draft, I look back and I wish I had saved it. It was so bad. It was so bad. And she read it and God love her. She's like, this can be something, but it's not it yet. And she literally wrote a chapter, said, here's a chapter you have, and let me take a swing at that same chapter. And what she wrote was magic. I mean, it really was like, wow, okay, I get it. And I wrote a little bit and edited and wrote it. And she's like, well, how about this? So it really was her sort of banging me along the road to sort of get in the groove. And so now I feel like with Karma, in the end, I found my voice, but it was clearly her tutelage at the front end. I mean, some of the stuff I wrote was just goofy, just hokey. And it really was her expertise of just sort of helping me find my voice. That started it all, really. Yeah.
So what sparked the creation of Gus Wheeler? And how did you know what kind of investigator that he was going to be?
So great questions. I'll take the last one first, in that I tried so hard to make what's Karma now? The title for the longest time was What Came Around. And I love that title. And that's a different story. But the publisher was like, yeah, no, that went out the window. But what really like started that was Mel. She was the character. She was the protagonist. She was going to do it all. And I just wasn't good enough to create a story at that point where a non-law enforcement person could solve a crime. I tried and tried and tried, and it just didn't work. So then it sort of shifted to, well, if it's going to be a thriller, I've got to have sort of access to crime scenes, that sort of thing. And what could it be? And I went all over the map. I want something different, right? A game warden, and there's an author in Maine that does that, Paul Dorn. He does sort of the game warden thing, and there's CJ Box that does it out west, and that's not really. And then I thought of like forensic stuff. I'm like, well, there's Kay Scarpetta and Patricia Cornwell and Dexter, obviously, and everything I thought of had been done. So really, for lack of coming up with anything brilliant, I just started basic. I'm like, all right, FBI, they do things all over, so I'm not pinned to, what I thought in my brain is like Murder, She Wrote. There's a lot of murders in that one small town, right? That doesn't hold water. So like some geography to it, they can do different things. And then with the FBI agents, it started really with just Gus. And then it just sort of morphed into, it can't just be the Gus show. It's got to be sort of a partnership, and FBI agents oftentimes have a partnership. And so the first version of that was really bland. It was really, really bland. And I'll come back to it. I mean, I think my wife leased everything but type. And I was sort of kicking it around. She's like, well, how about we have 3 children. Our middle guy, Sam, is a professional jazz player. And she said, well, and how about Gus is sort of an aspiring jazz player who's like he's good, but just on the cusp of making it. But as we were experiencing with our son, right, there's like reliable gigs and income, and there's, health insurance and all those real world things. And so at the beginning of Karma, before Jeff Cottagio sort of enlists them, the backstory is there, Gus was basically living below the poverty line. And he was eating crappy food, driving around doing gigs, just barely scraping by. And Jeff basically said, listen, like, I'll give you sabbaticals. We'll go through the training program. You're a smart individual, and you'll have, reliable health benefits, and you'll have a steady, it's sort of all that thing. So it just sort of smashed together. That was my wife Lisa's idea. And from there, I'm like, yeah, I think I can work with that. And it was sort of struggling. I talked to our son, Sam. Gus essentially is our son, Sam, through these books. I mean, every scene that you see Gus walk into, or thoughts that are in his head or anything, that's Sam. I mean, I literally will be like stuck on page 230, and I'll call Sam. I'll like, dude, like, you just walked into a green room at the back of a club. Like, hit me. What are you thinking? He goes, all right. And he's done, like, he's lived this world, right? He's like, yep, there's trash in the corner. There's a Subway tray leaning in the barrel. Like, he just goes through the whole stuff. And I'm like, and then I take all that and I sort of mash it together and bring it in. But Gus, like, his music scene stuff is extremely accurate. It is that I feel very comfortable. That's real world stuff, So that it's sort of a mashup. Like all the books, I kick it around with that. My daughter, I kick some ideas around with her, like in Karma, with the group of young girls, how would they react? My daughter lived that life. It's all stuff we see and know and experience every day,
So before we go any further, and Sherry, then I'll turn it to you. But why don't you tell? So for readers or anybody who's watching this with us, go ahead and tell us. Like, give us the background behind Karma Never Sleeps, and like the gist of it, and
Yep.
and then do your Wings of Madness, so that we can keep asking questions. I should have had you do that at the beginning, but
No worries. Yep.
so that we can, people who haven't read it kind of know what we're talking about.
Yep. Sounds great. And I happen to have copies here. So Karma Never Sleeps, first novel in the Gus Wheeler Thriller series. So the backdrop behind Karma Never Sleeps is there's a group of women who, if anyone's lived in a small town will appreciate this. They're sort of the top of the food chain in high school, right? They are the cool crowd, right? They largely stay in town. A few go away to school, but come right back, right? So they stay in town. So it really was, I've lived in small towns my entire life. And so to think this through, and again, kicking ideas around with my wife and family members, like, how could this work? And it's really that dynamic behind a group of women who have experienced all of life's key milestones together. But at the core, they're not really nice women, And so as they become, wives and mothers and frenemies and all that, those traits come out. And so that was the start of Karma Never Sleeps. And then you sprinkle in some things in the past maybe they're not proud of, and a secret from years ago. And it all swirls together where it really is a story of secrets coming to life, of revenge, of reckoning, and really sort of in the end paying the piper for things you did when you were young and dumb, basically, right? So that's Karma Never Sleeps. First book in the Gus series. In the second book, just out, Wings of Madness. This was taking the two FBI agents, Gus and Vanessa, and bringing them to a different case. So Karma Never Sleeps, the first book, is in a small town, remote location, very closed environment. And I wanted to do something different. I don't want to just kind of bump town to town to town. So Wings of Madness is based on a small city in Massachusetts. And it's not, it's not Boston, and it's not a big city where you can have a lot going on. It's a small city that's fairly downtrodden. So the story behind Wings of Madness is that there's a part of town called Music Row, and it's akin to, if you've ever been to Beale Street or the Quarter in New Orleans, whatnot. It's a smaller version of that, but unlike Memphis and unlike New Orleans and other places, this town, Pawtucket Falls, doesn't really have music in its DNA. So they block off this 3-block or 4-block area in the city, but it turns into really a grungy part of Syria. And so there's not blues or there's not jazz. It's just cover band stuff. It's outside, outdoor drinking, that sort of thing. And there's basically a serial killer preying on this area of town. So women go missing. They can't figure out how he's getting them out. It's busy. It's Saturday night. The place is hopping. They can't figure out how he's getting the women out. Gus and Vanessa go in to investigate, and they sort of go down the path of solving the crime with, twists and mayhem ensuing.
I have to ask, for your second book, how did you come up with the tunnels?
So that's a good one. So I love geeky shows. I used to watch on cable, there's a show, What in the World? And it's basically they take satellite footage and look at strange things around the planet and figure out the backstory to it. Love shows like that. There was a show, I believe it was on History Channel, the Cities Beneath, or some Underworlds or something like that. And it was basically every major city in the developed world was essentially built upon another city. Right. So, the classic example is in Paris, the catacombs of Paris. Right. But it's New York City. It's L.A. I mean, a lot of the tunnels that I did in Wings of Madness come out of some images and things I've read about Los Angeles, oddly enough. You don't think of that as an old city per se, but they built that city on top of all that infrastructure. So with Wings of Madness, I didn't know it was going to be that. I just love those weird, quirky things. I got to about page 240. And all along, I'm like, yeah, I'll solve that later. How's he getting them out? I want it to be a mystery. I want it to be like, a thrillerish thing. And I got to the part, I'm like, well, now I have to figure it out. I've only got so much runway left to solve this stupid mystery, right? And then it hit me. What if this is built on? And then the city is an old textile city. So I took the tunnel idea and then sort of merged it with, well, what if, oddly enough, this is a textile city that was in its heyday during Prohibition? What if those tunnels were also used to get the moonshine and bootleg out to the river? And it's modeled after a real city of Mass that I grew up near, so I sort of get it. And I just morphed it all together. And then it became, okay, then there are different access points. Well, maybe some are in the clubs, and it kind of went down that whole path. It didn't start that way. I mean, the book was very different. The book was focused on a completely different thread. And that came up, and I went back and had to rewrite a lot of the book to sort of catch up to that storyline.
Well, I have to say, I love the tunnels. I can still see them now, and I've read the book, not that long ago, but long enough that, and I can still see the tunnels in my head. So excellent job.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
So, and one of the words, and I did when I did my review for you, I use this as my question of the day. Have you ever seen a word or read a word, and busking was my word? I had never seen it before, so I Google it, and now it's like it's on my radar. I'm seeing it everywhere. So kind of a twofold question. Number one, are you musically talented, and have you done that? Because I kind of keep thinking you've probably done this somewhere, like you've played on a street corner somewhere. And the second part would be, have you seen a word? Is there a word that stands out to you that you're like, oh my gosh, I've never seen that, and then here it is?
So first question's easy. No. As I said at the front end, I can't say it's enough. I am probably the least creative person you will ever meet. I mean, we're just really not, And so no music. I love listening to music. I love, a child of the 80s, all the music references in there were spot on, right? The Goo Goo Dolls, I've seen the Goo Goo Dolls X number of times. Like, so all those bands, yeah, but no, the music stuff is definitely my kids. It's funny you say that about a word. I wish I had a smart answer, because there have been words that I've seen like, damn, that's words everywhere now, you know? I can't think of one off the top of my head. If it comes to me, I'll certainly let you know, but I'm sure it's happened. Yep, I'm sure it's happened.
Another one that got me was tableau. I never like, I'm like, what is it? And now it's like, it's in the thriller world. It's like everywhere. That one keeps coming back to me too.
Thesaurus is a wonderful thing,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
So going back a little bit to your writing style, how do you draft your stories? Do you know what's coming up? Do you outline? You've talked about having to rewrite several times. So
yeah.
how does that all work for you?
So I'll answer as it is now, because like I said at the beginning, it was a train wreck. I wouldn't give that to anybody. So now, I'm definitely an outline person, and it's this thing, and I'm sure you've heard it at some of the conferences and whatnot. It's what's it, the planner or pantser or something like that,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Yeah. Planner, full stop, 100%, 1,000% planner. I can't do anything without a list. I mean, in every aspect of my life. The joke in the family is, okay, like, what's on your list today, Dad? Like that, I'm just a list person. So to give you an example, both books, and certainly Karma, I know for certain, the outline alone for Karma was over 50 pages. Right. So it's everything. I wish I could bring up, I wish I knew how to screen share, right? But it really is. And it's evolved over time. So again, where I am today is definitely a planner. For submitting the books to publishers at the front end before Thule hit it, you have to do a synopsis. And so fortunately, I had a synopsis. I have a synopsis of probably 6 or 7 Gus books. And so when Thule came back and said they wanted to be a series, I'll back up a bit. Karma Never Sleeps was never going to be a series. It was supposed to be a standalone thriller. And another publishing house hit it with my agent, said, yes, we want it. And we went back to the others it was out to. Thule was one of them. Thule came back and said, we'd love it, but we'd really like it to be a series. I'm like, oh no, kill me now. Right. So 3-book series to start. And so I had a synopsis of that. And so that's how Karma was written, was with a synopsis, following a synopsis outline. I had a synopsis for Wings, but I moved off it so really quickly with the tunnel thing. And so really it's a pretty thorough outline. So a long way of saying, my writing process starts with a few weeks or maybe a month or so of backstories. And I got this, and again, I'm making this up by the seat of my pants. I've never had formal training writing. So I remember watching a documentary on Schitt's Creek, and they talked about a good 3 or 4 weeks of backstory. And I forget the primary, David, whatever his name is in real life, but his father, right, is his father on the show. And he said his father on the show, Eugene said, we need to get the backstories right. And he did it for like a month. And at a certain point, he's like, enough already. He's like, no, we have to get this right. And that stuck in my head. Did not do that with Karma. Tons of rewriting to make it fit the story. With Wings, I sat down for a solid month and developed all the backstories, a page on each character, to know when they got in a certain situation how they would react. Had an outline, and really the outline, what I learned from the first time was I could only outline about a dozen or so chapters ahead, because inevitably the story just sort of takes off. And then wrote, and then you kind of keep going down the path. And the one thing that I've learned more every time, and on Wings, I learned is I love the part, for me personally, when I get about a couple hundred pages in, and right then the story, it sounds bougie and whatever, and artsy and all that stuff, but it's true how the story reveals itself. So with Wings, it was the tunnels, and it was a eureka moment, and this is where the story goes. Like, this is how it all ties together. A little bit of rewriting. I'm about 90% done with Gus book number 3 right now. Actually, as of today, November 18th, we locked down the final title today. So it's official. And so with that, I'm on, about probably 80,000 words out of give or take 90,000 words. And over the weekend, the story just revealed itself to me. I know exactly how it's going to end. Didn't know it. Didn't know how it all tied together. I've spent the last few days going back and tweaks, some edits, but tweaks to make it fit. But the story just kind of gets. So like I said, there's outlining, ton of outlining, backstories first, and then write and outline just ahead of where I'm writing. And at a certain point, it just kind of pops. And the story kind of comes together, because there's a lot going on. There's ties and clues and all that. So long-winded answer, but that's sort of how I do it.
Are there any hidden Easter eggs from the first book to the second book? Because I try and find those. In my head, it's like a victory, and I'm like, oh my God, I just found it, but I haven't found one. So if there is one, then I'll reread it so you can just say yes. But if you haven't put an Easter egg in yet,
So in the second book,
yeah,
yeah, there's an Easter egg in the second book.
for book three, or that ties back
Oh
to book
no,
one.
for book one.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. No, I don't know. Like, I have basically for this now the third book, all I had was a one-page synopsis, which again I moved up pretty quickly. So to put an Easter egg ahead, for a book ahead,
Yeah,
would be pretty tough, right?
yeah.
So you talked about how Gus is a FBI agent. What sort of research did you do into the FBI? Because the FBI is not a huge part of the stories,
Right.
but what did you do to make sure that that part was accurate?
I mean, really, just these days, just as you had said at the front end, Teresa, almost everything's online. So it really was. I'll stick to two things. One thread, and we'll come back to it if you're interested. The research on like the plot, and the research on the characters, and on the characters specifically with the FBI stuff. I wanted to make it accurate, and I had no clue what was there. So the research really was like the FBI, what positions do they have, what makes a profiler versus an agent. By the way, a little known tidbit: when I wrote the first book and certainly the second book, I never thought Gus was a profiler, but all the reviews off of Karma, many of them said like, "Oh my gosh, Gus is a wonderful profiler." This time, well, I guess he's a profiler now, so it's sort of morphed. But it really was doing research, literally on the FBI site, reading papers about law enforcement, investigative techniques, how they do a crime scene. Like you just deep dive and get on this tunnel, and there's so much out there. The hard part, oftentimes, for me, is not putting too much detail in there, sort of backing it up a bit and just kind of hitting the points you need as a reader to drop in and go along versus and then the notepad and then so it's really just all online research, but there's a lot of research. I mean, I will say for both books, and I hope it shows, but between the characters, that's a bit of research, but with the plots and like in Karma, the poison and everything else, there is just a frac ton of research done there for sure.
Yeah, I want to hear a little bit more about that part of the research.
So with Karma, I'll hit two of them. With Karma, there was a lot of research. I wanted the poison to be something that was not readily detectable, and I wanted to be something different. The whole book I thought would be so different, right? And it came down to FBI, and so I wanted this to be really different. And so did a lot of research in sort of poisons in nature and medicinal uses of poison in nature. And I grew up on 80s movies and stuff, right, in books. And so Serpent and a Rainbow clicking in my brain, where it's based on a true story. It's based on a Harvard professor that goes into the Amazon and looks to get some of this basically zombie powder for its medicinal values. And so, John Carpenter certainly took liberties with the movie. The book is more true to the actual process of how we did it. So thinking that, like, oh, that'd be kind of cool to have in here. And so I started researching medicinal uses of nature's product, this sort of thing. And one came up, which is TTX. And it's out of the poison, out of the venom of, I think it's a pufferfish or something. And so I kind of went down that path. And then I started looking at exotic snails and and it just popped. And that was actually another thing with Karma. And so late in the book, I thought, man, there's probably an oceanographic institute nearby. Where are they going to get the poison? Like, they can't just get it mailed to them. That's way too straightforward. And so I dropped that in, and so to double back and kind of make that character have a job nearby, that sort of thing. So, that, and then on Wings, Wings was the research in the tunnels, ton of research there, and then I alluded to it earlier, but for Wings was a hard one. I'll back up. Wings. They say that, I'm sure you've heard about your sophomore book, right? And I'd never heard this before, but it is a thing that your sophomore book, she's a bitch, and that was hard. I mean, I wrote that book over 10 or 11 months, and I gave it to my son, Sam, the musician, to read it, and he shredded it. And he came back and it's just not working. And the reason it wasn't working, that book was centered around Taylor and his slip into psychosis. There were no tunnels. It was really all around Taylor and could he, could not. And I realized when somebody else read it that he was so far gone, there is no way he's a credible suspect to do things, right? He has to be capable of doing it. So I had to pull
Yes.
it back. So then I got it tight and put it into the publisher, and then I pulled it back because it was just a blocking and tackling mystery. It really wasn't a thriller. And so I didn't know how to do it. And again, my wife had a couple ideas. So I pulled it back from the publisher. I made it into a thriller, put it back. She came back and said, yet again, Taylor is not working. No one will like him. He's horrible. So I had to go back and basically give Taylor some softer sides. He was a womanizer. He was terrible. But that's all research. I had to do research on psychosis. I had to do research on drugs for psychosis, psychotic episodes, the symptoms of that, all the symptoms and stuff around marijuana, right? He's a pot user, and that's all true. All that stuff in there of marijuana being a real, high causal factor relationship between marijuana and psychosis, and all the drugs, LSD, and all the drugs are on there. There was a ton of research to get that as accurate as possible. I don't think I took any liberties or any major liberties with all of those kind of connections there. So I'm sorry for the long answer, but that's all the research on that one.
I love how you talk about the characters like they're sitting next to you. Some authors say, the characters talk to them. Do your characters talk to you?
No, but my wife will laugh at me because when I'm writing and if I'm reviewing a chapter, I read out loud. And oftentimes I'll read the character's voice differently or something, and she'll sort of peer in like, you're talking to him, right? So no, they're not sitting here, but I have clear, like with the backstories, I pull up a lot of images, mostly of places and scenes, so I can kind of get a sense, like some of the basements of the buildings, the old Milltown buildings, like those are sort of fresh from images, how to describe them. But I have pretty clear ideas as to what the characters look like. And so that I do that. But no, they're not talking. I hope they're not talking to me. If they ever start talking to me, then problems are going to start.
Do you have a hard time switching between Gus and Vanessa in their dialogue? Because they are like polar opposite people. And Vanessa has all the attitude. And I'm loving how Gus is learning her shorthand language. So, but is it hard to switch between those two when it comes to dialogue?
No, it's really not because they're so different. And maybe that's why I made them so, different in every way. Age, growing up, Gus in the Colorado wilderness, Vanessa downtown Detroit with tattoos and gangs, right? They're very, very different. What I find though is that when I'm writing Vanessa, there's an edge to her, right? Like there's a to her and her language, her slang, that sort of thing. What I find is I'll do that, and I'll actually have to go back and sort of tailor Gus's reactions around her. Like I'll write a scene, but Vanessa is clearly the lead in my imagery of writing the scene because Gus finds himself almost orbiting her, both in language and her idea, like that sort of thing. So I'll end up redoing it. Gus is still a very strong character, but Vanessa has an outwardly strong personality. And I need that to come through. That's what really sets her apart. She's brilliant. She's extremely capable. She's a very strong, independent woman. But I really wanted to make it look like Gus was her older brother and fully supportive of her. So I had to have him adjust to her more than anything else, really. Yeah.
I like how their relationships changed throughout the stories. What can you tell us about the third book and how their relationship is going to be? Can you say anything about that?
Yeah. Oh, the third book. You mean Before the Devil Knows?
Uh-huh.
So
Stuck that in, yeah.
that's right. Now you can have the graphics with like,
Yeah.
So yeah, that's title. You are the first ones to hear it. Before the Devil Knows.
Love it.
So that book is based around. So again, FBI some geography. That book is based around a very small town, northern Maine, very remote place where there's a church, and that church adheres to a very strict Old Testament doctrine. And so Gus and Vanessa get called into a case there for that stuff, right? So with that, you've seen their relationship evolve or, sort of grow between the two books. I didn't really put an emphasis or focus on their relationship growing. It just sort of naturally came about, like, what's the next step? I really stressed over not having Mel as a main character in the second book more than anything else, because, again, she started this whole thing. She was the character at the very, very beginning, right? So I don't know how their relationship evolves. She takes on more, I thought, more of an equal role in Wings, but many of the reviews I've read from readers is that she is shining. She is sort of more the lead. She's taken on a lead role. I didn't intend that for Wings. I'm glad that they have that perspective. In the third book, I guess I'm looking at more as the same, as they are more equal partners. So Gus essentially trained her coming into Karma, and she was definitely the associate. In Wings, she really is more his equal, and I think more of the same. And I think she teaches him a lot, right? She teaches him where she does have a psychology and psychiatric background from her training. She has a doctorate from Notre Dame, right? So she has that mind. And I actually think she has imparted a lot of that insight on Gus. I mean, Gus has a lot of intuition, but I think that has come from Vanessa. And I think more of that in the third book is that she picks up on things where he's like, you're right. So I think is more of that. I think almost like an intellectual equal to Gus. Gus is dyslexic, and his mind, I describe it in one of the books. I don't know if it's the newest one or this one, where his mind is like a circus, and it's all these screeching animals and trapeze out of swinging by, and he'll put stuff out. Vanessa's the one who takes that garble and sort of synthesizes it down into the right questions to ask and the right observations to make. And I think that's more so in the third book.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it, definitely.
Oof, I'm stressing.
Was Wings of Madness, was that always your first choice for the title for that book?
Great question. So always is a stretch. No. So with Karma, again, that was what came around. Loved it. Emotionally tied to that title. When the publisher came back and said, we're thinking not that. I was going to jump out a window. I lobbied hard, like, oh, but I'm thinking this. I was thinking basically like that type of idiom twist for a series of books, right? Almost like James Patterson, Along Came a Spider, the Nursery Rhymes, or I was really thinking the entire series was going to be that, and they're like, no. And my publisher, like most all these days, really pump it through AI to get a reaction. And that first title came back as, basically like a romance gone bad. And that book's nothing like a romance, right? So it was really what the reaction to a title would be. So long way of saying we tussled with a few titles. They came back. I'm like, oh, these are horrible. The first ones I get back were just terrible. And then they came back, and somebody at the publisher came back, and one of the three was Karma Never Sleeps. And me and my wife looked at my wife's like, that works. I like that. So it is. Wings of Madness was something different. Now I knew the drill. Now I wasn't going to get caught flat-footed, right? So I had a friend push a bunch of titles through AI. Nothing came back working. And I even forget, I think it was untitled. I don't think I had a title for Wings of Madness. I think it was just untitled. And I sent it into the publisher, and here it is, and went through editing. Like, I don't know, and it's like nothing was happening, but they're like, we got to like design the book. We got to design the cover, And then when I sent it in for, I think the second round of edits, or maybe it was the first round, I forget. At the very last minute, I had the quote in there. I love quotes at the beginning of books. One of my favorite author, John Connolly, does it for all his, and I just love it. And so for Wings, I had this quote. I had researched quotes on madness, on psychosis, on going insane, on all those things, and all of them are coming up. A lot of like Einstein quotes, and it came up with a French artist and philosopher. Charles Baudelaire, I believe you pronounce it as, today I felt pass over me a breath of wind from the wings of madness. And I was literally sitting there the night before I turned it in. And I was thinking about it. My wife and I sitting there, and I flipping through, and I looked at that. I'm like, wait a minute, what about Wings of Madness? And Lisa was like, yeah, I like it. I'm like, all right. I typed it on the cover, sent it in. They came back like, oh my gosh, it's the best title ever. I mean, it really was an 11th and a half hour thought. It just popped, And so the title of the third one, they came back early on this one, way early. I'm like, it was about a month and a half ago. I have no idea where the story's going. I can't even think of a title. But then as time's gone on, I know it's a very religious themed, a lot of Bible passages and interpreting the passages for clues. It's got that vibe to it, and so I knew I wanted to be some sort of Bible thing. And then with this one, it just came up that this was a great, and it ties that title ties in pretty intimately to the story and the characters. So, but I love coming up with titles now. First one I hated it because it wasn't mine. Now I love it.
Fourth, fourth book will be easy, right?
Yeah, it's a knock on wood. That's right. So it's a three-book deal with Thule at the moment. Yep.
Okay.
Have you realized that you've got a Gus Wheeler universe now? Like it's a whole thing.
I hope so. It's funny you say that. I have said that tongue in cheek to a couple people, like just in DMs. You're like, hey, someone who hasn't read the first book, I've sent them, both books on e-reader or something to review. I'm like, hey, welcome to the Gus Wheeler universe. Completely tongue in cheek, right? But yeah, I mean, it's cool to hear that. I'm biased. I love them. I don't expect everybody to love them, but it's pretty cool. I'm curious to see where Gus and Vanessa go.
You mentioned earlier the reader feedback in the reviews. So, do you read all of your reviews, or just certain early ones, or?
Sadly, yes. I'm so ashamed to say so. So on the joke was my wife and then our three kids, my daughter, our oldest, Mackenzie Mac manages all my social media stuff. She does social media for a living. So she, if there's anything that online I look good at, it's my daughter. It's not me for sure. And so I would be telling her the reviews, like I'm an addict on Goodreads, hitting the refresh button for new reviews, right? And I'm like, oh, Mac, I got like 52, I got 53. I feel like, Dad, you have to stop, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm at a 4.521, like all the stats, right? She's like, you have to stop, like you've got to let it go. So yeah, sadly I do. It's evolved to not as manic. I will say there was a huge relief that Karma got such a really good reception, because you don't know, you bang this thing out in your room and you don't know, and that was awesome. As I said with Wings, I really stressed over Wings. Wings was really, really hard. I mean, 3 major rounds of edits to get Wings to what you read today. I said at the front end, I say I'm not that creative. I've learned to write, I think, pretty well now. But one thing I do have is determination. So with Wings, it was like, I am not going down. I'm not going down without a fight, right? So long way of saying, I read fewer reviews now. Maybe I'm getting more comfortable in my own skin that I can actually write something, but I do read them all. It's just not on robo clicking to do it. And really to give feedback, because I know when I hit an author, like I said, like a John Connolly or somebody, and I know when they write back, even if they're not a big author, like a Carter Wilson or somebody who's clearly achieved a lot, but he's not a James Patterson, right? He's a very nice guy. I'll hit him up with something. When he writes back, I'm like, wow, like he noticed, right? Like he noticed that. That to me that means something. I really like that. So I try to do that. So anyone who leaves a review or comments on mine, I try my darnest to give them feedback, whether more than just a heart. Like heart, thumbs up, right? Like, no, thank you so much for reading. And I really feel that way in Goodreads. Comments, like, thank you so much for your review. Like, you took time to read my book. You took time to think about and write a review. You took time to go on Goodreads and Amazon and Instagram and post a review. And you took time to comment on people reviewing it. Like, you've done a lot. The least I could do is say thank you and read your review. That's kind of the way I look at it,
And I can say, from a reader reviewer, I love it when authors comment on it, because yeah, it just means so much to me that they read my review and they
Yeah.
like my review.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's not lost on me, and I'm sure many authors of there's a ton of work. I don't know how y'all do it. You read so many books. I mean, I'm halfway through the same book I've been reading this month. Like, you read so many books, and to put together a thoughtful review, that's a full-time job plus. That's a lot. So I completely appreciate it. I'm sure many authors do for sure.
If it was up to us, we would do it full time.
Yeah.
Yes, we would.
Yeah. Yeah. And back at you. If it was up to me, I'd be doing this full time.
So Gus kind of leans on Mel like intermittently, they kind of keep up. Do you think that we'll get more of her?
I hope so. Eventually. No spoilers for the next book, but eventually. I heard from one reader who happened to be a friend, two criticisms. One on Wings, that he needed a map of the tunnels.
Uh,
Yeah, and he said, listen, like a map of the tunnels, like you pick up a fantasy book and there it is, man. There's your whole universe right there. Like you know where you're going. He said, I really could use a map of the tunnels. He's the only one that said that. His other thing is, listen, either bring Mel forward or kill her. That was his view. Like, well, I'm not gonna do either, I don't think. She's not an investigator, right? So it's hard to have her in the story. I mean, she and Gus are clearly a couple. Um, at the end, I won't spoil it for folks who haven't read Wings, but their relationship, progresses, right? So eventually, I think she's going to come back. I've toyed with a story. I've toyed with a Gus book where um, a prior villain comes back. I've toyed with that to see if that's done. I probably should interject here. So you have one scoop of the title of the third book. The other scoop is last week Truly asked if we wanted to do more Gus books beyond the third book. So we're in chats about that now to see what that would look like. And they essentially said, like, how many do you have in you? We'll take them. They love it. They think they love it. I'm not sure how many I have. We're kind of circling around maybe 2 more after the third book. We'll see where it goes. But I think Gus has some legs. I think he can go a little further for sure. But anyway, I don't know where Mel goes. I love her as a character. She's modeled after somebody very close to me, near and dear to my heart, I'll say. Her background, we lived in Australia for a number of years, as did Mel. So there's a lot of things there. I feel like I could write Mel as well as I could write Gus. I have real world experience as to that character. But again, she's not an investigator. So I have to think that one through. Maybe, I guess, a long way of saying maybe.
which actor would you pick for Gus if he was on a TV or movie adaptation?
I honest answer is I don't know. I mean, it's tough to create a character that's unique mentally and physically. And with Gus, I gave him he's dyslexic, as my son is. He's a jazz player, as my son is. I took that all real world. He has the physique of my son as well. He's 6'4". He's thin and gangly. He's not a Jack Reacher that's like buff and works out or whatever. He's gangly. He's got a bigger nose. You can see where that comes from. He's got a big nose, right? He's handsome in a different sort of way. But I don't know what actor would play him. Like, part of me says do the Reacher thing, right? Tom Cruise played Reacher when Reacher's 6'6" and 260, and Tom Cruise is clearly not 6'6", right? I personally think that the first movie with Tom Cruise, I thought that was one of Tom Cruise's best acting performances. I read all the Reacher books. He crushed it. I think that was a great job acting Reacher. So I think more like skill and mannerisms than physical stature. Long way of saying, I don't know. I haven't picked anyone out. People have suggested like Hugh Jackman. They've suggested people like there's a guy that I forget his name. He played in 60,000 BC, I think. He was in This Is Where I Leave You. He was the young son in that movie. Like, I forget his name, but you'd recognize him. Somebody pointed him out. Somebody pointed out one of the guys in Game of Thrones, the good-looking guy that is with the blonde dragon lady woman, the younger guy. Like, people have said this is who he should be. I don't know. He's not your quintessential good-looking guy. Like, he's quirky. He's different, right? So I don't know. Vanessa, people have said someone like a Natalie Dorman, someone that, because she's punked out, right? She's got tats all over. Half her side of her head shaved, the top shaved. She has a very thin, long, foot-long, coming down, tail coming down. Like, she's punked out. So I feel like almost anybody could be made to look her way. It's more the attitude. Who has the attitude? One of my absolute favorite actresses who I would love to play it would be Jodie Comer. But we can just put that good juju out there. Please, Jodie, pick up the rights and do it. And then Mel, truth be told, I modeled Mel's personality and traits and backdrop as largely my wife. Her physical attributes and her mannerisms, that sort of thing, I modeled after Carrie Coons from, I originally thought of her as Go and Gone Girl, but she's since been in The Gilded Age and a zillion different things. She's a chameleon. She's a phenomenal actress. I pictured her as Mel when I wrote her. but that's about as far as I've gotten. I would love to have that constructive conversation someday, put it that way.
Fingers crossed.
Exactly. I would love it. Absolutely love it.
So if you had to give Gus one real life piece of advice, what would it be?
One real life piece of advice. Ooh, that's a good question.
I stumped you.
You did stump me. I can honestly say I've never had anything close to that question before. One real life. My first reaction would be to follow your gut, but I think he largely does that anyway. I guess I'd say from real life experience, don't let Mel go. She's the best thing that ever happened to you.
I think that's good advice.
Yeah.
And you just got brownie points too at home, so that's good.
Exactly.
Teresa, you come up with a good question there.
So we'll give you one more. And you do, I mean, Gus has a musical background too. So do you see, or does he have a theme song maybe when you write or when in your head? Like, does he have a theme song for himself or for him?
So for him, he has an eclectic interest in music. You know, he grew up again hiking and so forth. So he listened to a lot of, his parents were basically non-existent. They went away in the Peace Corps type thing, but they listened to a lot of, 70s, 80s, 90s rock type of thing. So in Gus's head at any given time, when I'm writing him, I mean, I have a playlist, a writer's playlist. I have a playlist of songs that inspire me when I'm writing. And it's everything from, REM's Losing My Religion. That's on there. There's a number of Goo Goo Dolls tracks on there. There's some old Van Halen on there, that sort of stuff. Like Gus in his brain is either practicing like a Charlie Parker bass line, right? Or he's listening to, Mr. Brightside he's got such an eclectic mix of stuff there. So I'd say he's sort of a barbell. Is jazz and that sort of stuff, or he's really into that kind of alt rock of the 80s and 90s type thing. Yeah.
Before we leave you, is there a bookstore or a way that readers can get an autographed copy? Like, do you have a local indie bookstore or someplace that you leave signed copies?
No, I am happy to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you go on, it's on my website, right? ourjohndingle.com. Each book has the buy click link, and you can buy it on every e-reader service known to mankind, and paperbacks on Barnes & Noble and Amazon. And I would love, and I have done many of these, of getting books delivered to me, sign them and sending them back. I've done that for book clubs. I love when book clubs read the book. There have been several that have read it. I love doing that. I'll give a plug. I have an author talk at the Booth Bay Harbor Library this Saturday, where there might be some free books kicking around. I'm not sure, but very happy to sign books for folks if they reach out to me.
Are you headed to anything else after this one? Or are you going to be in Calgary, or what's next for you?
I think I'm going to be at the next BoucherCon in Calgary. Truth be told, I have to get my passport updated. I believe so. And really, just because I didn't plan to go to last year's, but had such a great time. I mean, Teresa, you and I met, right? That was awesome in and of itself, right? But it was just a great environment. It was just meeting so many people you DM with or see online, and it was just as good as Thriller Fest in New York, which I absolutely love. That was an amazing experience. And so I think that's probably the next one. I've toyed with going to the Malice conference. I forget the group that puts it on. It's in like Annapolis, I think, in like March or something. But yeah, I'm out and about. If you can't tell, I love to talk. I love being on panels, speaking in front of people at conferences. So that's going to be my thing. I'm not the guy that really wants to sit alone at a bookstore for 5 hours to sign a book, but I'll be at these conferences where other people are too. So.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate you coming on here and talking to us, and we're super excited we got the scoop.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. We're glad to see you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you. And Sherry, it's great seeing you again as well.
Yeah, thank you.
All righty, take care. We'll talk soon.
Yep.
Bye.
All right, bye-bye.